and welcome to another California Guy video with your boy California Guy. What's up, everybody, and welcome to this video. It's entitled uh, "The Coon." Just a random video. I'll think of a topic in a minute. But welcome to this video. Now, I'm here to do this video because I've been listening to Coons the last few days um, on radio. Whether it's the radio shows with Coons and videos, where the Coons keep saying to pro-blacks, why don't they attack white people? Now, I've been waiting to do this video for a while because I was looking at a couple of points and reading in comment sections because it goes with the black on black crime issue too. So it's going to marry itself, people. So this video is going to be a little minute so I can get this point across. Now, even for myself, I'm going to use myself for example, nobody else. For the last year, I've been on Black YouTube, like I think a year. I started doing videos maybe last summer, and I mean I've always been a black activist before Black YouTube existed. Before YouTube existed, I've been a black activist for almost 2 decades. I've always been pro-black since I was a kid. Raised up in Oakland, California, home of the Black Panthers. Had relatives, all that stuff there. Been around Nation of Islam. I've been everywhere. I've been deep into this Pan Africanism for years, all my life. Now, I come to Black YouTube, and I notice that coons tend to say, like, if they're being an Uncle Tom, if a coon is an Uncle Tom, like on Black YouTube, and when a black person, an African American person, or a Pan African person, or anybody that's black kind of call them out for being an Uncle Tom, they quickly say, well, why don't you attack Caucasian people? Why don't either and they use the derogatory term of pro-black because that's what they try to be funny and say, well, if you so into your people, why don't you attack? Why don't you attack attack white people? Why don't you attack racist white people? Now, here's where this don't make sense at. Here's where Coons contradict himself. If you're repeating stuff that racist whites is saying, and how do you know that black didn't attack that white? They do. Most of the time, blacks do attack the whites that do that. But you're repeating the same thing as the whites, so why not attack you if you're speaking the same white supremacy talk? If you're repeating the same thing that a racist is saying and you're applying it to yourself, then of course you're going to get attacked the same way as the white person because you're siding with them. So, it makes no sense when you can't have it both ways. And then you tend to say, well, why don't you attack that white person? That's called race baiting, which you accuse black people of doing. Whenever black people call out racism, the first thing an Uncle Tom will say, or a coon, is that, well, what about black on black crime? Or you're accused of race baiting, which they get that from racist whites. Now, when you say, well, why don't you go after the racist whites, and why me? Because you're talking about black people and you're putting them down, you contradict yourself as a race baiter. So it makes no sense when it comes to these coons. These coons are absolutely are disingenuous at the same time. Then you hear coons say this. Whenever people like myself and other black YouTubers, black activist YouTubers, or so-called, they like to call people pro-blacks, which I don't get pro-black, but whenever we talk about like black on black, racism, the first thing a coon will say is, "What about black on black crime?" That's the first thing they said. Now, the other day, the one named LA did a video, and you guys could go to his video. I forgot which video it was, and he was talking about, I think, some police officer or Black Lives Matters. That's what it was. The first thing a coon does is go in his comment section and give up stats on how much of crime is committed by African American people, which makes no sense. And I asked the coons this question. Even some regular black people say this. Not just coons, but even some regular blacks say this. Why is it that you mention black on black crime when we're talking about racism? We're talking about police brutality. It makes no sense. If I talk about a racist thing going on or an issue that's in the mainstream media, and that's a strong issue, why is the conversation shifting to what about what black people do? It makes absolutely no sense. It really doesn't. Now, that's been an argument I noticed that's been permeating even before YouTube for the last maybe 7 to 8 years. That well, black people commit crimes, black people don't like each other. We need to unify first before talking, and it makes no sense. Okay, so we unify, but we still get killed by police officers. We unify first, but we still. What if some blacks don't want to unify? See, people don't know how to answer that question. They don't know how to come across. Okay, so we team up, but what if that black person don't want to team up with you? What if they want to continue doing what they're doing? See, they don't take time out before they make these statements to point out the obvious because coons try to dilute the conversation. They try to dilute the conversation. That's what it is. They try to shift it and be funny and snarky and smart. Well, why don't you go after one? Why don't you go after racist whites that's talking about it? Why are you going after me? Even though you're talking about racist stuff. Now, I've heard a bunch of coons say that. It makes absolutely no sense to even say that point. Because you're promoting what racist whites are saying. That's why we go after the coons, some of us black activists. Second, why do the coons consistently point out that we're frauds, Pan African people, and people like myself are fraud because I've been called a fraud multiple times on social media. They've called me a fraud as well as other pro-blacks or black activists and different black people on that's really for African and promoting global African and the rise of the black man. We're all called frauds, which it doesn't make sense to be called a fraud. I know I've been called a fraud many times, which is funny. I've been called a fraud many times, and I'm like, really? And see, me being a fraud, I go out there on the streets. I've talked to gang members before. I've went into rallies where we did anti-gun rallies. I went to rallies where we try to talk to the young men without picking up guns. See, that's called helping your black people out. That's called being pro-black, not sitting around talking junk and just putting people down. See, my record goes far and above. So calling me a fraud makes no sense. And I've been called a fraud on multiple occasions by different blacks. And I'm trying to figure, like me, I love Africa, and I love African American people. And I promote black unity majority of the time. In my videos, and I'm critical. I'm tough on even some black leaders. I mean, pro-black leaders. I've called out Eva Tariq the she. Even though me and him agree with most of the stuff of issues that he's talking about, I've called him out on some issues. I've called out Umar Johnson and other blacks on some issues that I don't agree with, but majority of the time, they still my brothers, and I get along with them. I still believe in what they believe in. So it just it makes no sense when I hear the coons bellyache and complain about people, black activists and pro-blacks. I get the term they like using, pro-blacks promoting black unity, and then calling all of us frauds. How are we frauds? I don't get that. How are we frauds if we're talking up for Sandra Bland? How are we frauds if we're protecting Black Lives Matters? How are we frauds if we're talking about police brutality? I mean, any coon can answer me on that. That's a coon challenge. Answer me. How are we frauds? How is pro-blacks on the black social media frauds? What do you want us to do? And I ask that question all the time. Whenever you have a brother that's speaking or a sister that's speaking, the first thing I see is they're called a fraud majority of the time, or they full of shit. And I be listening to this. That's why we can't get unity because we're always called frauds, or we'll call names, or they're trying to discredit us or say, "Oh, you're too hooded," or "You're of this way," or "You're ghettoed out." So, they said that about Malcolm. They said that about Malcolm. A lot of black people didn't like Malcolm X, believe it or not. They didn't like Marcus Garvey. They didn't like W. E. Du Bois. They like safe blacks like Booker T. Washington, and that's the mentality of African American people and African people in general today because of the brainwashing techniques. You guys would have probably had never. You guys would have never liked W. E. Du Bois. You'd have called him a father or Frederick Douglass because these men were radical. Nat Turner, he was a radical man, and you guys would have hated Nat Turner. So I don't know. I don't get why black activists like myself is called frauds. So, that's what Coons say. They say we don't go after white people, we go after them because they're black, because they're traitors. I just don't know no more to say. This is just a rant video. Like and share this video, people. Peace out.